I'm waiting for the director to say action, so back there.
If anybody needs a pen, we do have some up at the table.
And I believe every individual or couple should have a notebook or a book. We have some information in it and something you can take a few notes on, so. Welcome, everybody. I appreciate you taking some time for your evening to join us. I hope that you find this session educational. And we're going to cover a little bit of history of the endowment, but we're going to spend time talking about what gift planning means for you, what stewardship means for you, and some various ways to think about that we just don't always spend a lot of time in the forefront of our minds. So first of all, I have to apologize. I think some of the potatoes were a little al dente tonight. It was my responsibility to peel the spuds. I'm a little bit slow in that area, so we didn't get them on quite quick enough. But I do have a solution for you. I think by the time the meeting's done, they'll be just perfect, okay? So you should be able to partake there. So, make sure I haven't got this right. What we're going to cover to begin with here is just what is an endowment. Folks have asked us that. What is the endowment? How does that fit in with tithing and stewardship and those types of things here at Northridge? And first of all, an endowment is not our general tithing. The endowment is something different. I could say beyond, but it's really not beyond, or it's a different approach to us looking at where we would like to see our stewardship impacts go. And it creates an opportunity to provide legacy gifts, meaning we provide gifts today that will go into perpetuity and go beyond. Or we provide gifts that, from our own estate standpoint, we want to make sure we have adequate funds to be able to live on, things like that. But then when we get to the end of our time here on earth, what are we going to do with those dollars that we didn't utilize, and what possibilities are there for those dollars? So it's planned giving. It's something that we need to think about in advance. It's not something we're just going to say, oh, let's do this. It may be, but you want to think about how that fits into you and your family. And the endowment is not here to say, bring your entire estate to Northridge or to somebody, but it's to say, think about parts of your estate that would be appropriate to continue the kind of mission and stewardship that you would like to see to continue, things that you enjoy here at Northridge. That was the last church I was at, sorry. That was 25 years there, so it will slip out once or twice tonight, I'm sure, so my apologies in advance. When you get to the aspects within our culture, there are legal considerations, there are tax considerations, there's things to think about that. And the legal consideration to think about here for Northridge is if we manage an endowment appropriately and follow some rules within the state, that we can create a legal veil between Northridge and the endowment. Well, what's that mean? Well, the example I give is, what if something happens to one of the kids in the nursery or in the school here? There's chances are, if a lawsuit's filed, it'll include Emmanuel, and it will include Northridge because it's on Northridge property. If something were to prevail, and there is a judgment that comes out, we can create an isolation to where that judgment cannot reach into the endowment. There's certain rules and certain things that we follow, and if we do a good job of that, then we will be able to protect Northridge long-term from our own legal system and their appropriate rules, but we just need to make sure that we are following those items. And that brings us into the governance. The governance of the endowment, the first and foremost individuals that the endowment committee is responsible to are the donors. Our fiduciary responsibility is to follow what their donors' wishes were, and that we continue to use those funds in that way. And we use gift acceptances and things like that so that everybody understands, both Northridge and the donor understands how those funds, the earnings from those funds will be utilized. So we provide that responsibility to those donors. And then we have oversight for the fund. We need to watch what the investments are. Those investments make sense, who our investment agent is, and it's responsibility of the committee to be evaluating that on an ongoing basis. And then our other responsibility is to put an avenue out for planned giving, so that what types of education, what types of resources do we have available, and you're going to hear more from ELCA, who is our primary gift planning resource that we'll be able to utilize. We also utilize the ELCA in the investment management of our funds right now. So they are the investment manager. It's still our responsibility to look at those funds. How are they invested? How are they managed? What makes sense, and what makes sense to the risk tolerances that we have here at Northridge, and is that consistent with the investment manager? So that's part of what the endowment committee is doing, so that we can consistently provide those resources from the fund to the mission and support the mission of the church. So a brief explanation of what the endowment is. Tonight we will have your feel free to shout out any questions as we go along. If there's something that we say, anybody says it doesn't make sense, shout out a question and we'll spend some time on it. We will also have a little bit of time at the end for question and answers, anything that maybe come up during the evening that you want more clarification on. So the next part that we're going to move into it is the history. I'm going to just go back a little bit. What's the history of the endowment fund? And I have the opportunity tonight to introduce somebody that would be the oldest, the most amount of time that I've known an individual tonight. And I'm also going to have the opportunity to introduce somebody that has been the shortest amount of time that I've known tonight. So first is Bob White, and he's not the shortest guy.
Well, in one way.
In one way. So I used to hang around with Bob's brother here in Kalispell. And the fortunate part, Bob was a few years younger, but he never tattled on us. And we love Bob for that, because he would never tattle on us, never got us in trouble. But Bob, welcome. Thank you for taking some time and giving some history. And you can talk about your experience with that and all that. So thank you.
Thank you, Herb. You know, it's not very often that you get to do something like this and you look out and you can say, I think I know most every one of you and have known you for a long time. So Laura and I are back from our retirement sabbatical. I like to say we've been on sabbatical from Kalispell for about 18 months. So it's good to be home. Got on the ground about 3 days ago, and I really want to thank Herb for pulling this together, Herb and Carol. It's a lot of fun to go back to something, and you look back and you say, first of all, that was quite a while ago. And the other thing that was really cool about this experience of helping get this foundation or this endowment off the ground at Northridge is I got to brush elbows with some of the coolest people that a person never gets to know, especially in their young career. Because of my old background, and I said I always have to start off with an apology because I'm Lutheran, right? I want to apologize in advance for my description of this endowment committee because it will tend to take us into the weeds just a little bit. There's going to be a little bit of jargon. There's going to be a little bit of legalese. Herb alluded to that. When you're dealing in this part of the world, there's no way of getting around it. I'm no longer a professional advisor. I gave that up a couple of years ago. So when you have questions about this, you really do need to, as it pertains to you personally, seek professional advice because this is really interesting but also important stuff for you and for your families and for your church and your community. I'm going to do my best to get the dates right. I went back into some old notes, but I'm going back 25 years now, and now I could justify all that stuff that I've got in my office when Laura says, "Why didn't you get rid of those boxes 10 years ago?" The dates I'll use are going to be, based on my recollection and some notes, and so we're going to get as close as we can. So not long after Laura and I moved back to the Flathead in 2001, we became new members in Northridge, and I was asked to join the recently formed Endowment Committee. And the committee was formed a couple years prior to that, probably somewhere following 1997, and I'll explain why that date sticks in my mind. The founding members were Dick Irvin, Ivan O'Neill, Gary Cockrell, Ron Venata, and then Ron Garber, who I knew the least out of the group because Ron moved to Great Falls shortly after, and I was then invited to join the committee because I was a financial advisor with a background in corporate finance. So that was a really fun group of gentlemen to get reintroduced to after I'd been gone from the Valley for a long time. At the time, the assets that were overseen by the committee consisted of a few charitable gift annuities that had been given to the congregation and placed into a new endowment account held separate from other church assets. So I'm going to overlap and kind of repeat in my own words some of the things that you heard Herb say. The separate accounting is necessary in order to preserve the integrity of these endowment assets for both the churches and the donors' benefit. And so there are some things we have to do well in order to make this really work and not confuse and commingle these resources with the other churches' assets. These gifts were given in the form of charitable gift annuities, you heard me use that term, which qualify for the Montana Endowment Tax Credit. It was a new law passed 4 years earlier in 1997. That law was intended to encourage charitable giving in the state of Montana. And when written, the law was intended to sunset or expire, but it was one of those things that was so incredibly effective in encouraging endowment giving to charities in the state that it was extended multiple times and actually remains in effect today. So as the Montana Community Foundation website describes, and bear with me on this, Montana Endowment Tax Credit allows individuals and businesses to receive a state tax credit for qualifying charitable gifts to permanent Montana endowments, with up to 40% credit for planned gifts and 20% for direct business gifts. Established in 1997, the Montana Endowment Tax Credit is a state incentive designed to encourage charitable giving in Montana-based endowments while providing a reduction of Montana income tax liability. It supports Montana nonprofits and community foundations by allowing donors to receive benefits from contributions to permanent Montana endowment funds. So this state tax law designed and intended to encourage and provide tax benefits to donors who make long-term endowment or plan gifts. So like Herb said, this is separate from our weekly, monthly, annual tithing that we do that gets used for current needs of the church. These gifts are required to meet certain criteria outlined in the law governing endowment giving to charities, and these gifts are different than annual giving that provides for immediate needs to the church. Okay, a little bit into the weeds. The Uniform Prudent Management of Institutions Funds Act, also known as UPMIFA, is a uniform act that provides guidance regarding investment decisions and endowment distributions to nonprofit and charitable organizations, and it was adopted in 49 states, including Montana. Pennsylvania is the one that didn't adopt UPMIFA. Isn't that fast? When you said you were from Pennsylvania, I said, oh, you radicals. Yeah, exactly. As my dad would say, you up MIFA and you'll clean it up. Yes, that was Mr. White. Okay, this requirement included in the provision that the corpus or the principle of the gift. So when you give something, that's the corpus. That's the principle. Corpus of gift is not immediately available for use at the time of a gift. The principal amount of gift or corpus of these gifts is preserved for future investment and for long-term use. However, the earnings, so the fruits of that gift, are made available either to the donor or the charity, depending on the type and structure of the planned gift. In the case of the charitable gift annuities given to Northridge, the corpus or the principal of the gifts were designed to be released to the church upon the donor's death or at a designated time, usually about 10 years from the time of the gift. So this is not overnight short-term thinking. However, the corpus was to be held in an endowment account or foundation where only the earnings are available for use and the corpus is invested for future generations consistent with UPMIFA guidelines or policy. All right, so this group of people got together and made sure that when we were starting this out, that we were playing by the rules. And that was really important because, as Herb said, if you don't get this right from the beginning, then the risk is both to the institution, the church, and to the donor, that you lose these benefits. And these assets, basically, you have to unwind all the benefits that have been done. So it's really important and incumbent on us as a church that we do this right. Since planned gifts are essentially long-term contracts, they create legal obligations for both the donor and the charity. So we initially engaged Gary Cockrell, who of course was a member and executive director of Flathead Lutheran Bible Camp, who was knowledgeable about planned giving and skilled at drafting these contracts. Gary was not an attorney, but he used a computer program that was created and legally licensed for the purpose. And then later, after Gary's retirement, Margie Fiedler took over, and she took on that same role for us for any new contracts that went in place, but she was not a member of the committee. Ron Venata, then the treasurer at Northridge, took on the primary responsibility for accounting for these assets on our financial statements, assuring that they were accounted for separately from other assets and obligations of the church. He also maintained records of the financial obligations of these endowment assets. So a lot of these contracts come with some obligations that we have back to the donor. Since I was a financial advisor with a history in corporate finance, my role was to bring investment knowledge to the group. I didn't act as the committee's financial advisor, since that would have been a conflict of interest if I would have benefited from that position. At the time, the funds were held in a Fidelity Investments account and managed by the committee, and each member of the committee brought their own personal expertise to the table, and we all benefited from each other's input. My role was primarily to help ensure that we function in a manner consistent with other foundations I'd served on over my career. And at the time, I was also a board member of a newly formed foundation at Kalispell Regional Healthcare, which is now Logan Health. The Northridge Endowment Committee served largely unchanged in this way for about 20 years. And then later, when I was on church council, we agreed that due to the increasing age of the committee members and due to the financial liabilities that came with these endowed gifts, we engaged the ELCA and their investment program to provide financial management and investment advice to these assets. And this removed the direct investment responsibility from the endowment committee and provided additional resources to the church. However, the committee retained responsibility for three primary functions. One is oversight of our new ELCA manager. Number two, monitoring the financial obligation contained in each contract that governs each gift. And number three, determining the annual distributions made from the invested assets, either to the donors or to Northridge, depending on what each contract says. So over time, as endowment assets grew, the annual income distributions became a meaningful contribution to the church budget to be used as the council saw fit. The endowment committee would meet periodically and report to the church council, who was ultimately responsible for approving our actions as a committee. This bit of history takes us up to a couple years ago when Laura and I retired and Herb and Barb Sanders moved back to the community where they were both raised. And I'm really grateful that Herb took on this role to lead the endowment committee for Northridge and put together this educational program. Just a few final words about this and charitable giving just in general. A lot is written and discussed, and I've talked about the importance of tax and other financial benefits that come with charitable giving. However, based on my personal experience and the stories that I heard from the gentlemen I worked with and from clients I've worked with for 40 years, the true motivation of most donors is to serve their community and see their chosen charitable institutions grow and flourish. In my experience, giving is led primarily by charitable intent and to help promote the vision of nonprofit organizations. And here at Northridge, it's to support our mission to become a fellowship of Christian believers who serve the world as Christ does.
Thank you very much, Bob. Appreciate that. And you just thought I was getting crazy with acronyms and things like that last Sunday. Till Bob started to get up here and NIFTAs and clean it up and all that kind of stuff. I at least held myself back a little bit in that area. So you did. Thank you very much. I'd like to talk just a bit about our current endowment. And on this chart in the bold print, it's the original contributions, and I commend Sherry. Sherry, when we got back together, we said, so what do we know about the original donations? Because our first fiduciary responsibility is to the donor. So Sherry went back and through records found out what was the intent behind each of those donations. And of that $185,240.44, $10,526 was given specifically for missions. And these 5 categories, which is missions, education, youth, worship and music, and capital projects, are specifically listed in the original founding documents for the endowment. So those were set up originally with that group. And then there's the other one that's unrestricted. If it's not in one of those categories, it ends up being unrestricted. So we essentially have that unrestricted category. And so the balance of that was unrestricted. And what was important for us as we relaunched the endowment committee in 2005, what was important for us is to know these percentages. What percent of that giving was provided for these specific purposes? And in part of the time that that the funds were earning and in the endowment, the utilization of those funds or the granting of those funds was the purpose was to build the endowment, to reinvest in the endowment, to get it to a larger amount so that it becomes more meaningful. And so that was being done. And then 2005, essentially, we moved to the model to where in 2005 you see that the amount of grants, at least from a percentage-wise, what we needed to make sure of the granting money that came in, how those dollars would be utilized for missions, capital projects, and unrestricted. And that's what we did. Part of the endowment fund, or excuse me, the endowment committee responsibility was we would know what the dollars were going to be coming in, the earnings that were going to be coming from the ELCA ministry fund that the dollars are invested in. We would know what those dollars were coming to us, and then as the endowment committee, we asked the council to be responsible to utilize those funds in the greatest need, specifically in the unrestricted area, but then to also utilize funds as they see fit in missions and in capital projects, because those were the donors' wishes. And so that's what we did in 2005. And so the actual 25, excuse me, I'm sorry. So in the 2025 area, the minimum, the first columns over there is the minimums for 2005, and that's what the endowment committee needed to make sure we met, and that we provided that directive to the council. And the council then made the decision as to what the greatest needs were at Northridge to utilize the funds that you see in the actual 2025 columns, to where more of those dollars went to missions. 24% ended up going to missions rather than the minimum of 5.7. 30% went to capital projects. So the expectation, there's some HVAC equipment that's going to be needed to be replaced up here, and it was important to start building a reserve to be able to accomplish that. And then the balance of it was unrestricted, and with 2004 being a low, below budget year or below earning, a year that we had more expenses than income or more donations, we utilized some of the reserve fund that was set up to support Northridge during those times, and so those dollars went back to help that reserve account to be built back up. Sherry?
I just want to add a little bit of history to that. Prior to the fourth quarter of 2024, when we got hit with the $180,000 roof or whatever it was, the previous endowment committee and the people who oversaw it, they didn't take the quarterly distributions. They just waited till the end of the year, kind of looked to see where they thought we could use some extra funds, and just asked for a very nominal amount of money that allowed them to keep doing that plan of building up the endowment money. And then when we were hit with the roof financing, I talked to, I don't know if it was Josh, was it Josh Kearney, Chris, that we, Carol, we talked to? Anyway, we found out that we could, if we got the signature straightened out, we could start taking quarterly distributions, and it sounded smart for where we were at here financially. And so this is only, well, we've done it only for 5 quarters
Right.
so far. Just so you know, we've only taken the quarterly distribution for 5 quarters. So, we've done a good job of allowing that to build up and stuff.
Yep. And the ministry fund that the funds are invested in with ELCA basically have a format in those funds so that they generate earnings that is about 4% of what our amount is, that it can be available to us to fund our mission. And truly that transition happened where all of the income was reinvested in the fund itself. Now those incomes are being invested in the missions here at Northridge. So that action started that process, and this is what we plan on moving forward. And one of the things that we've done is those fund amounts that you see there in the column that says December 31, 2025. That's what our balances were on December 31st, 2025. The endowment committee evaluated that maybe we should look at realigning what we're doing and how we're utilizing the endowment fund. And so what the committee evaluated was, first of all, we wanted to simplify operations. We didn't want to go back. You saw back there that we always had to be at certain percentage in these categories. And instead of trying to keep track of that all the time, we wanted to simplify that. So we talked to ELCA and we said, what's the minimum amount that you would have to do individual accounting in each of the categories that we have here at Northridge? And $25,000 was the number. And so we took a look at that and we said, well, we can utilize some of the unrestricted funds and move them over to these categories that would be more restricted in missions, education, youth, worship and music, and capital projects. So we can move some of those unrestricted funds, and we decided that made a lot of sense. If we're going to move to this utilization of the endowment that's truly giving back into all of the categories here at Northridge, we put dollars in each category at the minimum amount. Other than capital improvements, we had to go to $35,000 because we couldn't go below the original percentage, and it took $35,000 to get us to about that. So that's why that one's at $35,000. So we stayed with the donors' wishes and expectations that their funds and the funds that grew from their reinvestment, we stayed true to their wishes and created then this categories. And now in 2026, there will be dollars that come out in these approximate amounts, that annual grant that would go to each of these categories, and with the balance of it being in the unrestricted. And so it reduced the potential income from the unrestricted from the $11,888 to the $9,248. So it reduced a little bit in the unrestricted, but it just put those dollars are now being used in education, youth, and worship and music. And so those groups will have this amount of income for the year that they will be able to utilize to enhance their ministries and their missions. So that was one of the changes that we made, and once the endowment committee evaluated that, we took that to council and asked for their concurrence on this kind of a move. And now we're going to have separate accounting so that it makes it easier for Sherry when those checks and those amounts come in. She'll know then this is going to specifically go to these specific ministry areas. So I think it's going to be a great opportunity as we kind of relaunch the endowment, that we did this realignment, is what we've called it, to really enhance all of the ministries here at Northridge. So that's what we can expect for coming for us in 2026. And anytime anybody makes a gift that would be in one of these categories, those dollars will just get deposited into that category, and then any earnings that comes out of that will stay with that category in the future. We don't have to keep track of percentages from way back in early days that Bob was talking about, and so this was a simplification that we wanted to do. Frankly, I don't want to get in the situation to where the endowment is dependent on one or two people at this organization. I want it simple enough that there's an ongoing understanding and ability to grow and enhance the endowment without being driven by one or two folks in this. And so that's a key goal, personal goal of mine, is to make sure that we have this on a very sustainable basis going forward. Thoughts, questions, comments on what we've covered at this point in time? Well, with that, I get to introduce the person that I've known the least amount of time in my life. I got to talk to her on the phone a couple times, emailed back and forth, but had the pleasure to meet with Sister Mary Ann this morning as we talked about what are we going to talk about tonight. So we went through that, and she's got some great information. There's a lot of there can be a lot of complexity in plan giving, and there can be some very simple aspects of plan giving. And I think she's going to cover kind of a range of those. And you're not going to go out tonight, I don't believe, you're not going to go out tonight with, oh, this is what I'm going to do. But I hope you walk away with a half a dozen nuggets, or at least 2 nuggets tonight, that you think about, that might fit for our situation. And if that might fit for your situation, then it's worth thinking about, and it's worth following up on. And so that's our goal tonight, is for you to be thinking about some ideas, and Sister Mary Ann's going to cover those. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, all the way.
that
What-
away from
Okay.
me.
Oh, thank you.
Want that?
I guess I do,
So you don't
so I don't spill your water. I should have brought my own. Well, good evening. They are taller than I am, those two. Thank you, Herb, for the invitation to be here. I'm really delighted. And yeah, I actually am from Pennsylvania. Let me explain. And that is that currently we have regional gift planners. That is my title. We have regional gift planners for the ELCA all over the nation. But right now, the ELCA gift planning spot is open here in the Northwest portion of the United States. Beth Adams, who may be a name that is familiar to some of you, but she retired, and so we've been working to find her replacement. I think we're very close to having that replacement, but it wasn't going to happen by February 10th. And I, as I shared with some of you, absolutely did jump at the chance to come back to Kalispell. I had only ever been here once before, and it was in September, and I was ready to come back. You understand. So let me tell you a few things about myself, just as way of introduction. First of all, that title sister sounds a little funny to Protestant ears. And so I'd just like people to calm down a little bit. I'm an ordained deacon in the ELCA, and I'm a member of the deaconess community of the ELCA. And the deaconess community is a community of women. We've been working, not I personally, but we've been working in the United States since the 1800s, the early 1800s. Women set apart for word and service in the church. And this was sort of a way to have those women who felt a call to ministry, but who, of course, could not be ordained, a way for them to serve. And so there are just about 85 of us or so, and I have a bit of a Julie Andrews complex, so I absolutely wanted to be part of that. And so that's why my title is sister, and we can calm down about that. Jesus and my mother both call me Mary Ann. You're welcome to do that. And as I said, we're looking for, or hoping that we will very soon have a regional gift planner here for Montana, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, Alaska. I really want that job, but it's such a commute. We're hoping that person will be in place soon, and then for future gift planning that person will be your gift planner. But you're welcome to call me. We're not territorial, really. I'd also like to tell you what I'm not. I am not a financial planner or a financial advisor. I am not a tax preparer or a tax expert, and I'm not an attorney. I'm I'm a former camp director, and I cannot tell you how marvelous it is to be in a room where other former camp directors are so well revered. Gary Cockrell was one of the first of the old guard of camp directors I met when I started out, and Margie Fiedler and I have been friends for years, and we spent the whole day together yesterday. So it's really delightful to be in that kind of company. But having said that, my actual job, as I like to say, is to help congregations build their endowments by working with the membership to create planned gifts. At the ELCA Foundation, we seek to encourage a culture of generosity in ELCA congregations and other entities. So that would include places like Flathead Lutheran Bible Camp and our synods and our social service organizations and ELCA World Hunger and all of those things. We're working to create that culture of generosity. And sometimes generosity is a fancy word for money. And it does work that way, but we really feel that generosity is actually a way of moving through the world, caring for those gifts that God has given us and sharing them. So that spirit of generosity is what we're working toward. As Christians, and particularly as Lutheran Christians, we operate from the point of view that the belief that everything we have comes from God. Oh, yeah, you were paying attention. Yes, everything we have comes from God, and we have that beautiful prayer in our liturgy where we give thanks to God for what you have first given us, ourselves, our time, and our possessions, signs of your gracious love. And we want people to live into that. We have been given so much, and it is ours to steward. And when we talk about planned giving is just a way that you can steward those gifts even when you're no longer around to do that, where you can set some plans in place. So I am going to attempt to use this clicker. Oh, did you want me to sing a little bit? I told you about the Julie Andrews complex. There is a line in the musical Pippin where a woman of a certain age, whose name escapes me, but it's a good name. Anyway, she sings this song where she sings, "There's one thing to be sure of, mate. There's nothing to be sure of." And planned giving recognizes that. There is nothing, really, very little in life that we can be certain of, except Benjamin Franklin from my home state, who was often quoted as saying, and it was about the Constitution, but it has the appearance and promises permanency, but in this world, nothing is certain except. Right. And planned giving takes, well, I'll also say this, death and taxes. Nobody wants to talk about those things. It's pretty much all I talk about. So I don't get a lot of party invitations. So again, Herb, thank you. It's really good to be here. Anyway, planned giving takes those uncertainties, and we work with them to assist people to be a blessing to others and bringing about the kingdom. I will probably repeat this, maybe I won't, but people will often say to me when we go into the planned giving process, well, I don't know how long I'm going to live, and I don't know how much money I'm going to have when I die. And I always want to say, you're not special. You're not. We don't know that. And so planned giving really does take all of those uncertainties into account, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. It might be time for storytelling. Whew, it worked. So in the Bible, which you have all read, there is a story of a rich young man who goes to Jesus and asks a really simple question: what is it that I need to do to enter the kingdom of heaven? And Jesus says, keep the commandments and sell all that you have and give that money to the poor. And the young man went away, and how did he go away? Sad. He was sad. And again, we can all settle down because the ELCA Foundation is not asking you to do that. And we're not even asking you to sell everything that you have and give that money to the church. Although I like to tell people that can be arranged. If you want to do that, I'm happy to talk to you. But in my role as a gift planner, I help people explore what a charitable planned gift might look like. And I loved one of my esteemed colleagues was talking about charitable intent and how important that is. When people do have charitable intent, then we can look at what that planned gift looks like. That's the only realm I work in. So if you're looking at just, finding the best way to do something else with your money, I'm not that person. But if you're looking for a way to give some of that away, I can help you with that. So setting up legacy gifts, planned gifts, which were sort of interchangeable. These are gifts that ensure the ministries that we care about, and we want them to be viable into the future. So legacy gifts also provide resources for congregations, as we already talked about. But it's not just about Northridge Lutheran Church. Most people who are charitable are feeling charitable toward more than just one entity. So again, we can work with that. And again, if you want to give it all to Northridge Lutheran Church, I'm happy to help you do that. But there are other ways that we can. You don't need to feel that the foundation only wants to talk to you about congregational giving. Nope, we'll do it, because what we are about is the good work of sharing the love of Jesus with a world that really, really needs some light and salt. I was paying attention yesterday. So we already talked a little bit about what a planned gift is, but I want to give you my definition. I have a couple of them. One is that it's any gift realized now or in the future that requires more work than writing a check or scanning a QR code. Something that just takes a little more effort, and it typically involves using a specific giving vehicle or a combination of those giving vehicles. And the important thing is, a planned gift is often the largest gift that someone is ever going to make. So when we talk about the impact that it could have on your congregation's future, that's because those gifts are often much larger than they would be. Let's see, appreciated assets, what is this? Oh, okay. Rather than making a planned gift, I was gonna make that point earlier, I'm gonna make it now. Rather than making a planned gift from your cash and your savings, like we do with an offering gift or even a gift for a special cause, a planned gift often includes kind of digging into your accumulated assets to put that together. Not always, but in the gift planning process, we take a look at your entire financial picture, your total wealth, and what your goals are, and then we try to match those up. But everything on this list can be used to create a planned gift, if that's something that you want to do. And we're here to help you figure out, the foundation staff is here to help you find the best gift for you and the people you love and the ministries you love. And again, I like people to know I am not what I am not, and I am not an expert on all of these things. I was introduced on Sunday to a congregation as the person who manages their ministry growth fund. And that was the scariest thing I had ever heard. That's where your endowment is invested. I don't manage anything except expectations. My job is the gift planning piece. We have people way smarter than I about investments who are doing that, and we can all be grateful for that. But again, with all of these different kinds of gifts, I am not an expert on real estate gifts of real estate, but I have colleagues who are. And I already mentioned we work really well together. And there's our entire bench strength of our Chicago staff who have been doing this work actually much longer than the gift planners, and so they're really good at what they do. But you don't have to be concerned that I am the one who is managing your I am not. So we talked about the fact that, that a planned gift takes more work than writing a check. I was an English major, so sometimes I get a little flowery. So I like to tell people that a planned gift is also a thank you note to your past, and it's a love letter to your future. And what that means is, it is a little flowery, but you, in creating your planned gift, you get to make a statement about who has been important in your life and what ministries have formed you. And then you get to decide how you want to bless those who have blessed you. So that could include all kinds of organizations, as well as Northridge Lutheran Church. And then those ministries are going to continue on into the world. So thanking those who have given to you, but also making it possible for others to enjoy those very same blessings that you did. So that's how it's a love letter to the future. And isn't that a pretty thought? It is. It is. Okay, numbers, oddly enough, are not my strong suit, but here they are. So these are, I don't think we have the 2024 numbers yet, or I don't have them in this presentation. But just looking at philanthropy, in 2023, $550 billion were transferred through charitable giving. That's a lot. $42.6 billion in realized bequests, and over $145 billion was given to religious institutions. This is a really hopeful slide to me. People want to be generous. Even when things are kind of uncertain, there are things that they want to have continue. So that's I think it's a very hopeful slide. And then there are some scary statistics, and my friend Kevin McAllister likes to help me with this one. So the first is that 68% of American adults have not yet created a will. Now let's all go like this. Right? I know, internally. We're all thinking that. Even though it's a really smart choice for everyone to do that. I shouldn't have gasped. And the thing is, the ELCA Foundation can help with that. On our website, which we'll touch on briefly in a little bit, we have a free will creation tool on there. So if you know someone, no one here, but if you know someone who has not yet created a will, it's really simple to do that, and it just needs to be filed. It is a legally valid will that you can do. So we can help with that. And the other scary statistic is that only 5% of Americans utilize planned giving, even though it allows donors to have a greater financial impact than if they had just given a single gift. And even though, as we have already touched on, there can be tax benefits to you and your heirs, but people don't think about it. So we're thinking about it. And then I know you're all sitting there saying, yes, 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 but why is planned giving important? I will tell you, it is important because expectation does not always equal reality. So people often think, not you, but other people may say to me, I've got everything all set up. I am giving 10% to the church in my will. And that's what Jesus said to do, and that's what we're going to do. I have a $2 million estate, so $200,000 is going to go to the church and 40% to each of my 2 kids. They're going to get $900,000 apiece. That sounds very simple, and it's not quite right, because that $200,000, after everything gets settled, is going to that $2 million is not going to be $2 million anymore. And then in some of our states, we've got inheritance and estate taxes that need to be paid. There's always taxes to be paid. So the kids aren't going to be getting that quite as much, although they're still going to get a really generous inheritance. But the other expectation that people often have, so things aren't quite as simple as you think when you just say 10%. But another expectation that people have is that, especially good church folks like us, is that memorial gifts are going to be given in my memory. I have that line in my obituary. It'll be in the bulletin. Or my directives instruct people to make memorial gifts to the church, that sort of thing. And the reality is, yeah, people will give. When you die, you're amazing. We'll miss you. They'll make a gift, but it's not going to be, in most cases, a transformative gift for the congregation. If you want the congregation to have that transformative gift or a gift that's going to go to the endowment or a specific thing, you need to set that up ahead of time. So a good estate plan, as it says up there, it's better for you and it's better for your loved ones, and there are some real simple reasons for that. Just kind of like we just talked about, it provides direction. And so your assets are going to go where you want them to. That in itself is a pretty good reason. You know how you want to be remembered, and you know who you want to bless. But the other piece is, quite frankly, it reduces anxiety at an already very emotional time for your family. I don't know if any of you have ever been executors of an estate. It's a lot of work, and it's so helpful when the deceased has put clear instructions there. It just makes it easier for everybody. And it also might provide those tax advantages for you or your heirs. In many cases, it does. The truth is that not all assets are treated the same way. So I always thought that every dollar bill spent was treated the same, but it's not in the eyes of those who make such decisions. So different monies are treated differently, and some money is better to give to charity, and some money is better to give to individuals. And there are all kinds of reasons for that, but the simplest example I have for that is if you have $100,000 in an IRA, and you have listed as the beneficiary on that IRA your children or child, and then you also have a life insurance policy where you have very generously listed as the beneficiary of that Northridge Lutheran Church, and they're both worth $100,000. That's great. You're very generous. This is very thoughtful. But what would be more thoughtful is if you did it the other way around, because that IRA going to your kids is going to be, they will have to pay taxes on that. So it's not going to be $100,000. And that life insurance policy, they could receive, and they would not pay taxes on that. Anything that you give to a charitable institution is not going to be taxed. So you just switch those. And that's part of what we do. We look at where your financial assets are, and then we look at what would be the best gift to people and the best gift to charity, and we put together a plan that works. So, there are options, and that's part of the problem. There are a lot of options, and I don't want to get jargony either. But there are so many different kinds of planned gifts. It is potentially overwhelming. There are fairly simple and easy to understand gifts. The top two there, the bequest and the beneficiary designation, they're pretty simple. Bequest, of course, you just have a line in your will that this much or this percentage is going where it's going. And the beneficiary designation you can do that on your bank accounts, your IRAs, your stock portfolios, your life insurance policies. That's pretty simple. And they're great planned gifts. A distribution agreement is sort of like that. A distribution agreement is an instrument that we use if, for example, you have up to 10 charities that you want to give to, that you want to leave a gift to. You list them on this distribution agreement, and the nice thing about it is what the direction in your will or your estate plan is that this amount, this percentage is going to go to the ELCA Foundation to be distributed per my distribution agreement. So it's the direction is held at the ELCA Foundation, and they will make that distribution. Yes, your executor could write those 10 checks, and that's a perfectly fine way to do that. But then one of the nice things about that distribution agreement is it is a document that is between you and the foundation. And so if you want to change anything, for example, if they change the carpet here and you don't like it anymore and you're not going to give that gift to Northridge Lutheran Church, which is how it happens in Pennsylvania. I don't know that that happens here. But if you want to change it, or if one of the other charities folds, all you have to do is call me or whoever your person is, and we just change it, and it doesn't cost anything, and you don't have to change your will. So that's what a distribution agreement is. That was a long explanation. I promised I wasn't going to do this, and yet I'm doing it. Okay, simple. We have a gift instrument called a named endowment. Don't get it confused with Northridge's endowment. A named endowment is, again, a gift instrument where you can open up one of those accounts, essentially, as Northridge just did with $25,000 or more. You can name it whatever you want, the Winnie the Pooh Endowment for Youth Ministry. You get to name it. That money is invested, and you get to decide who it's going to be distributed to on an annual basis until Jesus returns. It's just there forever. So that's kind of a nice thing too, if that kind of gift in perpetuity sounds good to you. Fun fact, you could set up your named endowment and you could have the beneficiary or one of the beneficiaries be the Northridge Lutheran Church Endowment for Missions, let's just say. You can do that too. If you have multiple that you want to do, Northridge can be part of that. And then we have the charitable gift annuity. We touched on that a little bit. And the charitable remainder trust. These are two gifts that pay income to you. You've probably heard about them. And it's where you make a gift now. It pays out income for life and at your death, because the actuaries do know when you're going to die. They don't. There should be half of your original gift in there, and that gift at your death will then go to the ministry of your choosing, Northridge Lutheran Church, Flathead Bible Camp, whatever. So we work with those income or split interest gifts. And then we can combine all of these, not all of them, but we can combine many of these gifts too. I had somebody who set up a distribution agreement, but at the same time, she also created her own named endowment. So part of her distribution agreement, it's going to World Hunger and her congregation and the seminary, and then a part of it is going to her named endowment. And then that is paying out again to some other places. So we can combine some of these. It gets really complicated, and that's why we don't have people raise their hands in a setting like this and say, okay, this is what I'd like to do. We can meet later and figure that out. Because, friends, it's a lot. It really is a lot. And what is going to work for one of you is not necessarily the same thing that's going to work for another of you in this room, even if you're talking about the same amount of money, even if you're talking about the very same kinds of assets, because what is in your heart is also very personal and different. So maybe just a very simple gift is what makes your heart happy. Or maybe you like the idea of that gift going on in perpetuity. Or maybe you want that gift that's going to provide income to you. That's the kind of gift that we're going to set up for you. But the thing is that you and your gift planner are going to explore what is going to work best for you. I always feel bad for that guy with his headache. So when you engage in gift planning with the ELCA Foundation, I like to kind of draw a picture of that process for you so you know what it looks like. The gift planners work on behalf of the entire ELCA and all of its pieces and parts. So again, congregation synods, camps, campus ministries, social service providers, continuing care facilities, World Hunger, which we already talked about, disaster response, global refuge, fund for leaders, all of these are of interest to us as they are for our donors. So we can often include non-ELCA charities in that gift plan too. So, even if there's like local libraries and SPCAs and things like that, as long as they're nonprofit, we can do that. So I like people to know that none of the gift planners, actually no one on the foundation staff, works on commission. And I think it's important for you to know that we really are beneficiary neutral. We're working on behalf of the donor and on the beneficiaries, but we are neutral. If you want all of your assets to go to Northridge Lutheran Church, that's great. I won't talk to you about giving a gift to Flathead, but we'll ask, because we want to make sure that your gifts are going to go where you want them to go. But the point is, none of us, whether you make a $5,000 gift now or you set in place a planned gift for $500,000, you can be assured that I'm still going to be paid the same amount. So when I'm working with you, I'm trying to find the gift that is going to work best for you. I don't feel satisfied until my donors are happy about the gift they put in place. Another thing that you need to know, I did pass around a clipboard and I saw that you were putting your information on there, and I appreciate that. I did, when I started handing it out, tell someone, I'm not going to show up at your house tomorrow. I'm really not. And I'm not going to call you on Monday when I get back home unless you ask me to. That's just not how we operate. I do have to record that I talk to people. So that's why I have that. But I was very clear with the interviewers when I was looking at this job that if sales was part of the job, I was not interested. I'm not salesy. And that's good, because our services are provided at no cost. You can sit down with a gift planner, spend an hour, get a proposal, look at it, decide you don't want to do it, and that's okay. It doesn't cost you anything to do that. So, and again, we only go where we're invited. I already said that, but I think it's important for people to know that. Yeah, I think I'll just turn the page. So this is what a gift planning process looks like in a series of pictures that you may or may not be able to see. First, we have a conversation. I sit down with my donors. We do a financial asset inventory. And there's actually a page in your folder, I think it's at the very back of the right side, that is a simple asset inventory. When you get ready to talk to a regional gift planner, it's really helpful if you come with that information that is handy. Not because we need to know how much money you have, but because we need you to be thinking about it and we need to know what's available. So it's nice to do that homework. But we have that conversation, and we talk about plan options. We talk about, next. We have the conversation, and then we put a plan together. That's blueprints. I don't know if you can see it. But so we put a plan together, and when the plan is correct for the donor, we sign that, we file it, and then the donor goes on and lives a beautiful, long life, probably longer than most. With those charitable gift annuities that we talked about and how the actuaries know when you're going to die, they really don't, because if you create a charitable gift annuity, I don't know how it works, but statistically, you add 10 years to your life. I don't know how it happens, but that's one of the reasons charitable gift annuities are not always everyone's favorite planned gift, because it's great for the donor, because the promise is made that we will pay you that income for life, even if we completely drain down that charitable gift annuity. But if you're looking to add some extra years, I'd be happy to talk to you about a gift annuity. So we put that plan together. You live a long and beautiful life. And then at the end of your life, those blessings that you have put in place, that planned gift, go out, and everyone remembers you and is blessed and inspired by your generosity. That's what it looks like. You will notice that the only part that your gift planner was involved in was that very first part, and then kind of at that end part, the foundation was in there. We do a little bit of stewarding if we worked on a gift a number of years back, or if you have reason to change that, sure, we'll get back into that conversation. But we're talking about a relatively short process, and we don't call you on the first of every month to see if you want to get together. So I like to say that gift planning with the foundation starts with the heart. Because we want to talk with you about who you love. That's how that conversation goes. Who are the people that you love? Who would you like to give a gift to? And then we talk about your assets, as we already mentioned. We talk about what you're going to need now and what you're going to need in the future, because we don't want to mess that up. And then we talk about what will your loved ones need. And then finally, the very last thing that we talk about is what charities do you want to support? And people always want to start there. And that's fine. I suppose we could, but those other things are just as important. We are not here to take all of your money away from your children. So that's not what we're doing. Unless you want to, we can. I think we established that already. Yeah. Some things that you can also calm down about. Most planned gifts are completely revocable. Most, not all, but most are. So we can, if there's a change in your life, if there's a change in circumstances, if there's a change in your heart, we can go back and make those adjustments, especially within the donor's lifetime. We have a lot of flexibility. But the truth is, we really do want you to feel good about your gift plan. In my early months as a gift planner, I got a call from Hazel, who was approximately 135 years old. And she was a little bit weepy when she called me. And she said, I'm very concerned because I put this plan in place 15 years ago. I never thought that I was going to live this long. And she said, my kids, as it turns out, need more assistance. And I had a large gift in place for my church. I don't think my church is going to be around much longer. And even if it is, she said, I'm not sure that I want to give them money to hobble along. She said, my kids need that money. What can I do? So I went out to visit Hazel, and we sat and we talked about it, and I put a plan together, and I came back and I gave it to her, and we're sitting there in her living room, and her cat Snowball is on one side of me, and her cat Snowflake is on the other side of me, and I was really grateful that I had a lint roller in my car, because they're long-haired white cats. And Hazel was looking at the gift plan where she was now leaving a much smaller gift to her congregation, but we had shifted it so that her kids were getting a little more of that generosity. And she looked at it, she was very quiet, and finally she looked up and she said to me, I feel much better about this. Done. My work is done. I felt so good about that, and when Hazel did go to be with Jesus, I knew that her gift was being taken care of the way she wanted it to be. And her congregation is still there. They are still limping along. God bless them. They're amazing. But we can make those changes. All right, now it's time to talk about the Muppets. That usually gets a laugh. So you probably remember the scene near the end of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, in which the ghost of Christmas yet to come shows Ebenezer Scrooge this vision of some of the poorest people of London who are going through Scrooge's belongings, and they're helping themselves to the things that they could use. And it's a beautiful callback, because Dickens is an amazing storyteller. It's a beautiful callback to a scene at the beginning of the story when Scrooge angrily refuses to give even a cent to help the less fortunate. We know that Scrooge had a complete change of heart about such things after his long night with the Christmas spirits, and he began living this life of radical generosity. And it provides us with this lovely ending and a beloved ghost story. But one of the truths that is contained in that story, and one of the certainties, one of the few that we can live with, is that at the end of our lives, just like Scrooge, we're all going to be charitable. Whether we want to be or not, it's going to happen. And we have the choice to experience the joy that comes with knowing that our treasure that we worked hard for and stewarded for so many years is going to have a positive impact on the people and the organizations that we love, that have been, namely the government, can make those decisions on our behalf. And the U.S. Treasury will be more than happy to accept your charitable donation through your estate taxes. They're happy to do that. The government will take their cut. And we at the ELCA Foundation, and I personally I'm not anti-government. I flew through relatively safe skies to get here, and I drove here on roads. I'm very grateful for what is done, but I do believe that everyone should have the agency in distribution of their wealth and their accumulated assets, and a chance to decide for ourselves the kind of legacy that we want to leave. So, yeah, we're all going to be charitable. Let's do it the way we want to be. And then finally, I'd just like to remind people that planned giving is, it's a thank you note to your past and a love letter to your future and all of those things, but it's also just a way of living out your baptism beyond your time here on earth. In the sacrament of baptism, we are welcomed into the body of Christ and the shared ministry of giving thanks and praising God and bearing witness to God's creative and redeeming word to the world. And we've been called to carry that light out into the world, into a world that desperately needs God's love and God's light. And so when we enter into legacy planning, especially with the ELCA Foundation, you can be assured that it is so much more than simply creating a plan to distribute your gifts that you've been given when you're no longer here to steward them. Legacy gift planning is a way that you get to create your own final statement of faith. And you can fully live out your baptismal call to proclaim the good news and to serve all people following the example of Jesus. You've got your statement of faith that you've put there, and you put an exclamation point on the end of it. Resources. Okay, first of all, I wish we had the ability for me to take you on a tour of our website, because we have a website. The ELCA Foundation website is so full of information, gift planning tools, things that you can just plug in numbers and see what a charitable gift annuity would look like for you. It's impossible to navigate. Just impossible. So call me if you need help with that. Or you can just kind of poke around on there. I'm happy to tell you we're in the process of revamping it. And they asked me for my suggestions, and I gave them. So, but that website is really full of a lot of very good information. You can look on there, and if you just have this much money and you want to know all the things you can do about it, there's a button to push for that. Other resources, on the table over here, we have the full candy bar version of ELCA Foundation resources. And that is, stepping out of frame for a moment. We have these two books that look exactly the same if you're far away from them. One of them is a record book, one of them is a lesson book. Don't be scared because it says lesson. There's so much good information in here all about gift planning. The record book is a good one to take because you can put in all kinds of things that whoever is taking care of your end-of-life things can refer to this, and you've listed everything, including your dog and cat veterinary information. It's all in there. But so these resources are excellent. I encourage you to take one per household. They're just really, really helpful. So we have those. In your folders, like I said, there's that asset inventory that's in there. There's a marketing piece about the ELCA Foundation, if that's helpful. There's a sheet in there about giving from your IRA and because those rules change every year, so that's in there. And there's also a page in there with language that you might want to put in your will or estate plan if you're just looking to do a simple bequest or something like that. So that's there for you. Also on the table, and I did not print out one of these for each of you because it's expensive, and I spent my entire afternoon at Staples today. There are sheets, little one-page descriptions of all kinds of gift instruments. So if you're just tired of hearing someone say charitable gift annuity and not explaining to you what it is, there's a page over there, and there are pictures, so it's easy to understand. So if there are any of those that are of interest to you, I'm going to leave them because they're too heavy to carry home. We talked about the website. I know what the last thing was. Also on that table, there's a sign-up sheet. If you want to sit down with me tomorrow and just kind of explore what a gift plan might look like for you, I'm going to be around because I don't fly out until the next day. That'd be Thursday morning. So if you'd like to do that, I have a sign-up sheet there. And if not, I will find something else to do tomorrow. So don't feel like you have to. But so that's there. I am done. Am I on time or off time? Well, we're all doing great. Y'all are good listeners too, and I think good listeners should hear that. You are very good listeners, and I appreciate it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
There's definitely lots of options, And one I told Marianne I was going to ask her about tonight. I'm going to walk through this a little bit. And it's an option that it sounds reasonable, but adds complexity in how to do it. But I think it's, for Barb and I think it would be a right thing to do. So my example that I wanted to talk about, and I want to get Marianne's feedback on that, is I'm from a generation that my entire retirement is in IRAs, pre-tax basis. So that's something that we need to be thinking about. And we need to be thinking about because it's a taxation on my kids if I just give it to them. They're going to have to pay the tax. Somebody's going to pay the taxes on that IRA. Either I'm going to pay them, Barb and I are going to pay them, or our kids are going to pay them. And it just all depends on who we want that burden to be on. Then you heard me talk about Uncle Sam and Monty, Montana last Sunday. And I got to looking and thinking, okay, Marianne, if I have a $40,000 IRA, I got $40,000 in IRA, and I'm not certain I've got enough income to live on, but I think I will. But I would really like to see that $40,000 end up in Northridge or some charitable organization. I'm thinking that what I'd like to do is set up a charitable remainder trust. And a charitable remainder trust means that the remainder, this $40,000, I'm going to take $40,000 and I'm going to say at some end of period, it needs to be what, at least 10 years or so? 7-10 years, or at the end of my life, somewhere in there, at my life or Barb's life, depending on how we set it up. So and I know you're not a tax accountant, but Bob's going to help me on this a little bit too, because we're pseudo tax guys. We had to be. If I pull that $40,000 out, and make this as a charitable remainder trust, I pull that out, that becomes a taxable income when I pull the money out. However, it becomes a donation. So I pull the money out, I'm supposed to be taxed on it, but I'm going to turn right around and make a deduction for our charitable gift of $40,000. So I'm bringing that money out now without basically having to pay tax on it, because I want it to go to the end of charity. Now, because I'm not sure I've got enough income with all my assets, I still want to make sure that I can get access to that income. So we would do some type of investments through ELCA, right? Or their partners that would do that, would keep track of this for us, and the earnings off of that, some amount off of that $40,000 would come back to me as income, correct? In a charitable remainder trust? Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, sure. Can I use this one?
Yeah.
Excellent. And I should have said this to you as soon as you started. A charitable remainder trust needs $100,000 to start.
Okay.
But a charitable gift annuity you can do with 40,000.
Okay.
That would be a way of doing that. But there are some other things that we'd want to look at. Like the first, that one of the things that I would look at, so it's an IRA, and you want it to go to Northridge. The easiest way to do that is just to do a beneficiary designation. Then that way you still have access to that in your lifetime, which is sometimes a really important thing. If you put it in one of those split interest gifts, you only have the income, the distributions from that, and you don't have access to the corpus anymore.
Right.
So I would encourage someone to think about that first. If you were looking at doing one of those life income gifts, charitable gift annuity would be the way to do that. The other thing that I was thinking about that you could do, if you want the gift to go to Northridge, but you still want access just in case in your lifetime, you can set up a testamentary gift. So you still have access to that, but the planned gift goes into effect at your death. So if you wanted to do one of those named endowments, where it's going to perpetually give to Northridge Lutheran Church, and you can do that easily with $40,000, to set that up to be funded at your death. Okay. So at your death, that $40,000 or whatever it is at the time would go to the foundation. It would be invested in Ministry Growth Fund, and then would pay out that distribution to Northridge. So,
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So there's those options. There's one other item that we could talk about, and that is the Monty Montana's I always get charitable endowment tax or distribution, CED, charitable
Okay.
endowment distribution. That Montana will recognize an additional tax credit of 40%, of 40% up to a maximum of $15,000
That sounds right.
credit. So all of a sudden in this transaction, because of the tax credit that could come back to me, I could be making some dollar amount gift of, I'll call it 40,000 if we're using, and we can't quite do that because of the 100,000 number on, if we did the charitable remainder trust. But I would get this tax credit. I get this deduction of Montana state tax that I would have to pay. All of a sudden I get I get a check back from the state of Montana on that. So now I made a $40,000 contribution, and it only really cost me $34,000 to make that, because I had Montana taxable income to do that. So those are the kinds of things that we can utilize in this process that the states and the federal government has said, we're going to give benefit to you donors if you will contribute to nonprofits. And that's part of the benefits that could be built into these various types of gifts that you look at. So that's really what I wanted to point out is it's not to ride the tax law, but
Use it to your advantage.
use it. They've set up these opportunities for us to do that, and all of a sudden, if that made sense to me, and I really wanted to give $40,000, I got another $6,000 that I'm going to go give to somebody else. So now, somebody got $46,000 benefit for my donation of 40,000. So there's the tax side of this that can be utilized to help the nonprofits in this, and I think that's beautiful. That's why they set that up. They want to promote it, and it gets complex, but it's there, and those are the cool opportunities. So
Yeah, and there's some interesting ways to use that Montana tax credit. Working with somebody who is doing a CGA for $25,000, a charitable gift annuity. She's going to get that tax credit. She's going to do the same thing next year So she's going to get that tax credit again. She's going to do the same thing the next year. She has plans to do this for 5 years in a row. And again, so it's just a way that she is using that to her advantage. She is a really good financial planner, and we all are working together on that. So,
And essentially, she's going to, instead of giving it all today, one dollar amount, she's going to get a five-fold benefit out of it by spreading it out over 5 years. Because there's some limits set into the Montana code. And if you just go to the limit and you're going to say, I want to do this much and I'm going to do this much each year, then you get that benefit each year. So those are the kinds of things that really is helpful to have a gift planner to help say, okay, this kind of asset has a little more complexity, but man, it's got some flexibility in what you can do to help
Yep.
our communities. So, Becky?
So, are there, if we have our own individual, financial planner, can they carry out this thing through DLCA for us?
As I said, yeah, we work with folks' financial planners all the time. And actually, that's how I even got to know about that Montana tax credit, was working with this donor's financial planner. Yeah.
Are there specific financial planners that you recommend?
I can't. They're probably all mostly good. But in this situation, I've never actually talked to the donor. I've talked with the gift officer, who's where the gift is going, and I've talked with her financial planner, but I've never actually met her or talked to her. So.
I'm saying, who would we go to start this process?
I think to start the process, you can talk to a gift planner. I would give you a proposal, or your gift planner would give you some proposals, and we always encourage people then to take those to their financial planners, because there might be something that has been missed in putting that together. There might have been assets that were missed. There just might be other parts of the picture. So, because we only work on the charitable giving piece of that, whereas your financial planner has a much better sense of your overall picture.
So if we were gonna do it, we would contact the gift planner, and then go to the financial planner, and then you do our will? Is that what you do?
Well, if it's a gift that's coming through your will, yes. If you were just simply wanting to set up a charitable gift annuity, that doesn't have anything to do with your will. That's a separate transaction. Yeah. So we're getting real specific, but yeah.
And I think the point in here is most financial planners will understand these kinds of tax advantages and benefits, so they'll understand those. I think one is if you give a proposal after you've talked with somebody, my guess is that's not the final proposal, because if it was me, I'm going to talk to my financial planner, I'm going to talk to my tax accountant, and I'm going to make sure it fits in with my legal estate plan. So I have 3 professionals that I would want to include in my conversation along with that, and those 3 all have great perspectives, but very few of them bring all of those together, and that's why it's really good to have a team of folks that are helping you out in that process, because each asset has different legal requirements, has different considerations for tax ramifications, and you just have to be able to work through that process. But it's not to make it complex. I mean, it's very simple. I'm going to put a beneficiary on some stock that goes to the church. That's very simple to do, and you can do that. But if you want to move to these other kinds of planned gifts, they're available. They're complicated, and it's good to have the advice of your trusted advisors in tax, legal, gift planning, financial planning advisors. So it's good to have those together. So. But I just wanted to give some kind of example there that says, hey, there's a nugget for, okay, do I have IRAs? Do I have pre-tax accounts? Do I need to be thinking about that, and how do I do that? Just like you said, yep, switch your beneficiary on your life insurance and your IRA. Get those switched around so that all of the money that goes out gets actually to those nonprofits or to the individuals, and not lose some in the tax ramifications of it. So.
Yeah, and everybody's situation is different, which is why I try not to get too many detailed questions in a situation like this, because everybody's situation is different. So, and we get to take the time to look at that and really consider that. But as I said, my job is to help those Lutheran ministries continue into the future. So that's where I want my donors to be happy, and I want my beneficiaries to continue on into the future. Where your financial advisor has a different set of qualifications, things that they're looking at. You had a question.
Well, I was just gonna say, that one path kind of leads to another. I mean, just in our situation, mine and Eric's personally, we started out many years ago with a financial advisor, and that led us to the situation because we had so many children. How are we gonna do this? We need to set up a trust, so that led us to a lawyer. And then when we started getting our retired minimum distributions from our investments and stuff, then we had to go see a tax person. So, I mean, I guess I see it as I don't wanna call it a necessary evil, because it's just what you do. But, you start out, I think you probably start out with the gift planner or the financial advisor, and then they'll point you where your personal situation is such that you need advice that I can't give you,
That's very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. Thank you.
So this would probably never happen, but say that you give an endowment to a church and the church fails, where does that endowment money go then?
So if you would set up a named endowment with the ELCA Foundation that benefits a very sad but beloved congregation, there is wording in all of our gift planning documents that if that should be the case, if it becomes impossible or if the ministry is no longer there, we have a committee of our board that looks to find an equal sort of situation. A lot of times if it's a congregation, if they've merged with another congregation, we just have the gift go to that congregation. If they haven't, if they've just simply closed, many times that'll go to a synod office. You can add wording. In some of our documents, the donor can add wording. If this should happen, I want this as a secondary beneficiary. We can do that. I've also had donors who have set up a gift and they have named someone else as a secondary advisor, so that even at their death, even at the death of the donor, their child or their designee can then decide if some changes need to be made. So there's some flexibility in there. But yeah, everything has a lifespan, even our congregations.
Perfect. Well, appreciate your questions and thoughts. So one last presentation that we want to cover off this evening here, and as we were talking about from the endowment and our objective of education and planning, and I come from a philosophy, failing to plan is planning to fail, and so Carol was talking about, some of the toughest times are she's sitting down and making funeral arrangements with loved ones at the time that they're in deep grief, and she has 100 questions for them. And those are difficult. What do you want here? What do you want there? So Carol talked about, she said, well, this is a perfect time to include this kind of information, is just do some planning on our own part so that we don't put our loved ones through additional stress at the time of our own passing. So Carol, I'm going to turn that over to you.
So I want to highlight with two stories.
I had a Betty down in Plains. Betty described herself as a tough old bird, and she was. I met her, she was about 88 years old. I had a copy of her will. I had a copy of everything you probably ever thought I would need, and I didn't know why. I knew where her gifts were going, everything, and she came into my office one day. Actually, she called me. She's like, "Pastor, I want you to wear that darn collar, and I'm going to come visit you." And I'm like, "Oh, this is a good one." She comes in and sits down. "Now, I got everything planned. This is where my money's going. This is where my body's going. This is blah, 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 blah." On and on and on. She pulls out a legal pad. She pulls off 7 pages for me. Front and back, tiny, tiny handwriting by Miss Betty. These were all the scriptures she wanted read at her funeral. Don't laugh. She then proceeded to tell me, "I want Gloria to play the piano. I want Denise, very specific Denise, to sing blah, 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 blah. I want this other person to sing this. I want Bill, this particular Bill, not because there were 4 Bills, I want this Bill to do my readings. And we will have communion," and just on and on. And she pulled out then the hymns that she wanted sung. 4 pages, teeny tiny writing, both sides. My biggest problem with Betty was getting her to let me to drill down to 3 hymns and 2 readings. We then created her bulletin. Betty lived for 4 more years. She had her cover picked out. Week later, she calls me again. I'm like, "Oh, this is good. Wear that darn collar." And I'm like, "Okay, I have something I want you to read." And I'm like going, "Oh my God, it better not be 7 more pages. I cannot read the entire Bible. We'll be here for a week." She comes in and says, reads this, slams it on my desk. It's her obituary. That darn Todd, who's her son, is not going to get this right. I want you to proof it. Oh, okay, great. Todd, then, just before I left Plains, she's like, "We need to have a meeting with Todd." Now, Betty has been dying for 6 or 7 years at this point, according to the doctors. And this time she is going downhill. So she had me come in, and I talked with Todd and his wife, and I'm like, "Everything's planned. You have to show up when we pick a date. That's the only thing you guys have to do." Later, Todd said it was the greatest gift. He also wanted to know how I got the 7 pages down to 3 readings, but that was it. During that same time period, I met another family. Grandma Ruby had died. Ruby wanted to be buried from the Lutheran church. I sat down and looked with them, and I got the deer in the headlights look. "Do you have a date?" "No." "Okay, let's figure out a date." We went through the whole thing. I then said, "So, do you have any readings that you want? Did Grandma have any favorite Bible passages?" "Oh, do you think it would be in her Bible?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, if she's got an old one, let me see it. We'll pick out a couple." They had no clue as to what music they wanted, if they wanted a pianist, if they wanted a singer, who was going to read, who was going to do a eulogy, or who's going to read the obituary. Like all of that. None of that was decided. And I'm dealing with this family in deep grief who are deeply missing Grandma or great-grandma Ruby. And I spent hours with them trying to help them get through that. I understand they had the same problem when they wrote the obituary. So in your packets, I've given you a couple of tools. Number 1, suggested readings and hymns. These tend to be the most popular readings and hymns that are often sung. What a gift to your family if they know that. And if you really hate a song, like I had Ms. Betty, I really hate In the Garden. If anybody's going to sing In the Garden, it was just on and on and on. I knew that we were not going to do In the Garden with Betty. If there's something you don't want, you put that down too. Do you want communion? That's an easy one, yes or no. Some families look at me like, "What's that?" I'm like, "Okay, Grandma knew, but you didn't." So that's going to be an easy no. But what would you like? Who would you like to be the reader? I've had people say, "I don't want anybody to give a eulogy. I just want so-and-so to read my obituary." Perfect. We can do that. Where do you want to be? But then the other thing is, once you have that plan written down, just some basics, what you're looking for, give it to the church office. We take a copy, you take a copy, and you can put it with your will. So now when it's time to plan your funeral, somebody can go, oh, look, Northridge Lutheran Church knows what grandma wants for her funeral. Like, what a great gift. Also in there, I have just a simple outline thing of what to put in an obituary. Now, not all of us, Mike, I'm going to pick on you for a second. Not all of us are driving in a car with Diane as she's writing his obituary. We don't all have that gift of somebody doing that for us. But here's something. So if there's a highlight in your career that maybe your grandkids or great-grandkids don't know, put it down. Why not? Because they're grieving your loss, and we want to celebrate your life. So that's the greatest gift I think that you can give anybody. Simple things. And Herb, are we anything else?
Yeah, are there any other thoughts or questions that anybody may have? And again, Marianne is available tomorrow if you just want to begin a dialogue and some thought process and just do some brainstorming. I don't think she needs to take you so far as you get a formal proposal or anything like that. Just start the thought process. So, any thoughts, comments, questions? So, we would ask from the endowment committee, first of all, I want to make sure I've stumbled over this twice, and I'm really sorry. Endowment committee members include Jen Spears. Sherry, you heard from her. She's treasurer. She's giving us advice on the endowment as well. And so thank you so much for those two. We've made some progress this last year. We've got a little bit more to do. We need to put together some more guidelines and gift acceptance. If somebody does want to give a piece of real estate to Northridge, there's some due diligence that the endowment committee needs to go through to ensure that we do not harm Northridge.
We can help with that.
Yeah, because of that real estate having some type of issue, title issue, environmental issue, some type of issue that wouldn't be good for Northridge. So we're putting together those guidelines and with the support with ELCA and that. So we've got some work to do to get our ducks really lined up in a row, but we're pretty close. So we're ready to say that we're open for 10 years. Thank you so much, and I think Barbara, the potatoes done now.
And we're going to close with a prayer.
Close with a prayer.
We're going to pray. Okay, so let us pray as Jesus taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Safe travels as you head back to your home.